concentrated hard enough, I know that sounded really awesome. I did hear it. I could feel it. I could feel it. Had me jamming.
Yeah, it was fantabulous.
You have to transport yourself through the wires into some other part of your room to hear it properly. Yeah.
Yes. Hey, welcome to IoT Coffee Talk.
Yes, first show after Memorial Day weekend. Hope everybody had a blast. And Rob, thank you for your service. And everyone else that has served and is currently serving, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Absolutely. So how do you guys like my collection of Macs back there?
Yeah, you need more.
Mac Museum.
Yes, you should get like a Mac Quadra from the early 90s or something. I don't know.
You should just do an Apple Newton with double-sided tape and just stick it to the wall next to Jimmy back there.
I like that.
Yeah, that would work. That. Or the Apple IIe.
Apple IIe would be good. Apple IIe was such a hit for Apple, wasn't it? It was a big hit.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
Arguably overshadowing the launch of the Macintosh. Probably, maybe, because it was already in market for so long, and I feel like everybody had an Apple IIe. I don't know.
It was pretty dominant back then, right? And then
I remember IBM came out with the PC Junior to try to compete with the same look and feel as that.
Yeah.
Apple. Yeah.
You know, those were really great commercials, though. They really made cool commercials back then.
Who?
IBM.
IBM? Oh, tell us. Oh, tell me more about those commercials for the PC Junior in the 80s. Oh, yes. Yes. You know, in life weird? Isn't the marketplace weird? You have this, like the Apple IIe, and then they did the Apple IIc, which IBM copied with PC Junior.
Yeah.
And it's like it didn't matter that the Apple had superior tech. The IBM juggernaut just took over in business everywhere.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter that it was harder to use. You know, it didn't matter that people and corporations had that little keyboard overlay plastic thing they'd put on their keyboard to show what the F keys did and stuff like that. So you could use WordPerfect or Lotus or something. Yeah. It's like, it was interesting. And I think this goes back to a brand identity and a sales force where you can overcome a superior opponent by, IBM just had decades of enterprise street cred. And IBM, you're right, they did the ads. Good. They'd show stacks of all the different software that could run on the IBM PC and stuff like that. They did what was the guy? It was from the silent movies, whatever. Anyway,
Charlie Chaplin?
The Charlie Chaplin. They did all those ads in the 80s for that. And those ads were trying to push back on the Apple juggernaut for sure. It's like, oh, well, the Apple might be cool, but and they were showing like binders and booklets of business software stacked all the way to the ceiling. But IBM is what you use to get real stuff done.
Yeah. I was playing with Tonka trucks, so I don't know what you guys are talking about. What I can tell you that they were well made, cast iron, like real parts, and my earth mover was, super, super, super awesome. I was a popular kid in my block because of the yellow Tonka trucks.
You were
Bob the Builder. We established last episode you're like 65 years old, right?
I'm Benjamin Button myself.
Yeah. Right. Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Those were such interesting times. A lot of people today have no clue that there was a computer revolution happening in the 80s. They'd be like, what? They might be going, maybe the 90s, maybe when Netscape came out.
Well, I think it's fair to say that as a society, we're doing a great and excellent job at just disregarding history, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
To your point, I mean, we've talked about it here that there were examples of robotics in production in the mid '60s.
Yeah.
Right? We were talking about all this stuff that came from the Apollo missions. Like some of this stuff is not new, kids, but I invented something. It'll give you internet access, and where everyone's like, "What? Wait, what?"
Yeah, that's why I think this whole ageism thing is so whack, in this notion that people who have experience, have years behind them, are not innovative. I had a conversation with someone last week where we were talking about how cool it was to play Wizardry. I don't know if you remember Wizardry. I was a big Dungeons and Dragons fan when I was a kid. And one of the most revolutionary games at that time for the group of nerds that I was associated with in junior high was Wizardry. And it was like the simplest thing, right? Our version of the metaverse was basically these cubes, this like, I don't know what you call it, like it's basically cubes that like a maze, and it's just a few lines, super simple, and you could kind of what do you call it, dungeon delve, and what we thought was an interactive environment, right? And so we were talking about metaverse and how we had imagined back then what we are looking at now in terms of gaming and immersive experience and stuff like that. So, and a lot of the folks back then, when they were in junior high, many of my friends were inspired to go into computer sciences, and they worked on the foundational technologies of all the stuff that we're talking about today. And it's amazing how far we've come, but there were some really creative, imaginative people that had a lot of passion for what they imagined could be possible with the computer technology that was starting to come out at the time. So you're right, man. Just because the technology wasn't ready at the moment doesn't mean that we didn't imagine amazing things even back then.
As you said, talking about games that we're playing, as kids, and you said Wizardry, you triggered a memory that I just looked up on Amazon. But I used to play a game called Dark Tower, and it blew us away as kids because there was an electronic component that randomized the movements. Now, I doubt that it had more than 8 lines of commands, but you couldn't really guess what the next command was going to be. And it used this bit of, you had dice, you had your army, you had an electronic component, and you had to make decisions based on this random thing. And it was the most difficult, mind-blowing game ever with very little code. So unfortunately, we're selling them for like $600, and I don't have Marc money to just splurge like that. But I'm going to think about it because it is a collectible.
How's it going?
And think about how long AI has been around in gaming, AI.
Is that like
number generator?
Is that like the AI? There was a game a million years ago, a physical game. It was a football game, and you had magnetic players on this metal field, and then when it's time to run the play, you turn it on, it just vibrated and went, and the players are like going, and they just go to random places.
That's like a random number generator right there.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're going to end up using that to solve a problem, like in some movie coming out when you need old tech, and they're like, wait a second, remember that football game where it just vibrated? That's how we're going to stop the aliens. We're going to that's how we're going to communicate with each other.
Any of you guys played Duke Nukem or Prince of Persia on PC?
Oh, yes. Loved it. Awesome. I love Prince of Persia. That was such a good game.
Yeah.
Is that the one where you're swinging on and going across? And
Yeah, many hours.
absolutely.
What's up, Marc?
Hey, how are you doing? Can you hear me?
Hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Yeah, loud.
Hey,
Sound good.
I was listening to your stories, and I was surprised. I was wondering myself if the camera, Rob's camera, has AI as well, and it's moving, or it just was myself.
No, it's not the camera. Rob hired a person, a professional camera holder, and as he moves, this little guy just goes like this. I mean, talk about disposable income.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. How's it going in España today?
I don't know. It's going well, I guess. It's sunny. It's tomorrow. I'm going to Zaragoza, and I think a lot of IoT things are happening there.
Seriously, in Zaragoza?
Yes, it looks like Libelium is doing interesting stuff, and yeah, we're gonna see some 3D printers, innovations, and yeah, that's it.
That's cool.
You're going to see 3D printers.
Yeah, there is a company that does some 3D printing for metals.
Oh, okay.
So if a plane needs a piece, so they can 3D print it instead of order it on the normal.
That's good.
Companies.
But isn't it just easier to order from the OEM and 6 months later they deliver you the part? I mean, that sounds way easier.
Well, it depends on what you need, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, please, let's not 3D print the wings, okay? Like, we could wait for those.
Right.
You never know, no?
Yeah.
You mean the tape that they use, no? I don't know if you float never on a on a plane with that tape that you have at home, right?
Yeah.
In the wings. So you never know.
Why not?
It's been tested in a wind tunnel. It's great tape.
Are you sure about that? Or it's just a digital twin that simulated that tape? Oh wow. The AI is going.
I'm doing this myself. Like I'm changing. Oh, I'm on fire. Yes. I'm giving myself a new look on the fly, On
what?
So in my Lumina AI 4K camera, I have software that you can't see on the screen.
Yes, obviously.
Yes, where I can change all kinds of stuff on the fly, in addition to the AI that's happening.
I was giving a talk a couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure if I already took this subject here, but like we have to realize that cameras are not like the cameras anymore, the cameras we used to have. So a camera that you can find, it's not just taking pictures, but maybe has some edge processes of realizing if you're a male or a female. Maybe depending on how you look like, it can calculate the weights that you make, where you work, check you on social networks. And so it's this concept that the camera isn't the camera anymore. Maybe now Lumia has a lot of data from Rob that he doesn't know.
Could be.
And sharing that with third-party companies
The chief marketing officer of this little startup has reached out to me saying, hey, man, do you want to do some video stuff? Obviously, he's trying to get testimonials or influencers to say, hey, I'm using the new Lumina 4K AI. They believe they're revolutionizing. They think they're pouncing on the work from home trend, and maybe they are. And thinking,
but you connected this over USB on your computer?
Yeah, it's just USB.
Did you check the antivirus and everything? Do you know what? I'm not sure what Chinese company did that on the Mobile World Congress, but they made a big party like a long time ago, and they give like the latest mobile phone so invited all the board people from all the big companies, and it gave them for free the latest mobile phone.
Wow,
that was a good approach to get all the information from presidents and CXOs from companies.
Wow.
All you have to do is go on Facebook for that.
But it's funny. But folks, let's not forget how that how Stuxnet got deployed. Someone said, I wonder what's in this USB drive. Let me plug it into my production environment. Oh, there's nothing there. Years later.
Oh man,
it does.
That's actually a very interesting read, to read the step-by-step stuff, how the Stuxnet worm got deployed and got into the centrifuge and stuff like that.
I actually read the book. I mean, it's like, and it's got politics, it's got cyber espionage, it's got tech, it's got, it has it all. Zero dark hour, something like that.
Yeah. But if you think about it, I mean, this is horrible. Stuxnet seems like this awful thing, but what it was an alternative to the Israelis wanted to just bomb the hell out of that place to stop the Iranians from doing that. And the Americans said, hey, we have another idea.
Yeah. I mean, and lots of controversy, but like if we just stick to that, it was a great example of cyber warfare to avoid either boots on the ground or just like or an air campaign. Like there was, if we think, just send a drone, there's no one there, but there's usually the collateral damage, right? And it was just we're targeting machines. Yeah. And machines are not people.
That's right.
Sometimes depends who you're asking.
Oh, come on. Machines are people too. Yeah. But you're right. It was a series of 0 days that they knew about in Windows and some Siemens PLCs that allowed that thing to hop from place to place, to then get the centrifuge going too fast and doing all that stuff.
And they couldn't find it. There were so many examples where you had like 12 infected machines on a site, and they would, the operations halt to a grind. The tech expert comes over, wipes everything clean, and and it would just happen again because you had a land level infection. You basically had to throw everything out.
Yeah.
Pretty wicked.
It is.
Actually, I was reading about a hacking that was in Ukraine, but not in Ukraine. In like this, in 2014, Russia got this part of Ukraine, Odessa.
Yeah.
So someone, nobody knows yet, hacked the electricity, the power
grid.
The power grid. And how they do it's really interesting. So they went to the managers of the companies, of the electrical companies. So 3 companies, and usually, this happens to small companies, but probably as well to big companies. That the managers want to have access to everything, right? So that I'm the manager of my company, so I need to have access to everything, to the source code, to the to the SAP. So they hacked them. So hacking just 1 people from the company was enough to get access to everything. And it was really interesting, this concept of why the manager who has is the one who has less knowledge, technical knowledge, needs to have access to everything because it's the biggest threat for the company, actually.
Right. Absolutely.
So on industrial companies, I'm sure that like the owner of the company wants to have access to everything, and this is a big error and a big threat for the company, actually.
Oh, they need even if it's a fractional CISO, please hire one and don't do that. And no, you don't need access to that stuff.
I need to have access to all my industrial PLCs and actuators from a tablet at home. Make that happen.
Well, but what a great segue. So, and it's topical, and it is industrial Internet of Things. So our friends at Siemens released a router, a gateway that will work on private 5G, and they loaded the Profinet protocol on it. So, today we would have to have, say, wire device, the IO to the controller. This needs to be wired for me to, control it. Now, if I have a device that's got 5G, and I've got this gateway that understands the Profinet protocol at layer 2, I can get rid of that wire. So I think this is a huge step for some of the mobile automation on site to start happening. So I'm guessing AGVs, AMRs will be the first thing to go. But to your point, Rob, how would this change the layout of a factory for production facility if I can effectively distribute my my controllers? Because now I don't have to daisy chain them anymore. So anyway, super interesting. That came out last week, and if Siemens did it, it's only a matter of time till we get Emerson, Schneider, Yokogawa, Rockwell, and to do it. So fun times in industry, and let's see what new problems this brings.
Yeah, and they're now virtualizing the controller, right?
Honeywell, you talked about this last week. Yeah,
right. And so this whole cloud native architecture is starting to trickle down into the offerings of a lot of these big players, which is interesting. So they're modernizing their product architectures. I mean, slowly but surely, right? Because I think a lot of the customers are still wary about, well, number one, I think cloud is a bad word for them, but cloud native is a little bit different. They don't really call it that, but you see the virtualization. They're really latching onto this idea of virtualization, being able to now software define different aspects of the control system and be able to provide that level of software defined flexibility. You're still not hearing too much about K8 and stuff like that. I think they're just really sticking with, you have an appliance, you virtualize it, you allow the different services and functions to be a little bit more flexible in the way that you can configure them and compose them to support your control processes. So it's interesting that that's happening, and becoming a thing.
It's also, I think the industry is so conservative that maybe we won't get the marketing hype. Because if you talk about too much virtualization of control systems, you're actually going to lose every buyer. They're like, no. Right. So we might see an honest thing, hey, it's a PLC. Remember x86 and all the things that that. And people were like, okay, we're not curing cancer, and it's not PLC in the metaverse, and it's not 2 trillion devices with a CAGR 86. Okay. We can do this. Let's see what happens.
So later on this week, I'm going to the NAMM shows, that big music merchants
in Anaheim.
Where you get, in Anaheim. And it's funny how, probably the first industry to go through this digital transformation is the music industry, the equipment industry. Because I don't know if you guys have ever been to a studio or seen the old guitar, in the 80s, the guitar rigs, these gigantic racks. Literally look like server racks of effects and power amplifiers and, digital processing units and, solid state amps, blah, 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 all kinds of crap that they would cram into these large, probably 300-400 pound rack systems. They virtualized all of those. And now you can create a virtual stack on your Mac or your PC, and you can record directly there. And you can also take a lot of that just on your iPad. And they have adapters, peripherals, that allow you to basically plug straight into a house board. And you have basically the power of these, 400 or 500 pound massive racks on your tablet, And so I think it's that same transition, because a lot of the musicians are super, super picky about their equipment, and they associated quality with hardware, right? It's all the stuff we're talking about.
As a professional guitar player, you have a compatibility advantage, Leonard, that the jack from the guitar, whatever guitar, to whatever equipment is a standard jack, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, see, it's an open system, we would say.
Yeah, but
imagine if, I didn't bring the Les Paul cable. I need a bag of 32 cables and adapters to change things. If I want to play with Marc's guitar, like, you don't have that. You just plug in.
Yeah, that's actually a wonderful point. Yeah, mind blown.
Mind blown.
That was
something.
That was my one clever thing for the month.
No, but talking about
we have to stop now.
Yeah, talk about going from just pure hardware to virtualizing to software. I saw somebody posted this morning on LinkedIn the original circuit diagram of the original Pong video game from 72, 73. And the entire game is hardware. It's all just circuitry. There's no software. And it shows you a picture of all the circuitry that made Pong work. What an example of just going from pure hardware to make a video game do its thing to software.
How also had to be a big board, right?
I guess.
I mean,
relatively speaking.
Relatively speaking, yes.
Yeah, because you're right. It was inside those stand-up video games back then, right? And so, it wasn't until almost a decade later that Atari miniaturized and maybe softwareized that to be in a home console,
Yeah. I mean,
times have changed.
But any hardware needs software, right?
Yeah. Of course, there's lots of people today that don't know what the word microcode means, but it's the ghost in the machine.
Truly a ghost in there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, by the way, speaking of work from home, Elon Musk just, I saw this headline that Elon Musk is telling his employees, come back to the office or else.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
That's probably because he lost like $70 billion the other day. So he's got to take it out on somebody. I mean, I'll make everybody come home if I lost $70 billion. Come to the office. Make my money back.
Exactly. You cannot build my cars from your home office. I need you to come back.
No, I am not going to set up a 3D printer in your garage so you can make parts for Teslas.
Exactly. You cannot build the Starship from home.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting how all this work from home stuff plays out because
we've already said lots of news for weeks and weeks on end about Apple and all that. Yeah. Apple's like, get your ass back to the office, and the employees are like, hell no, we won't go.
Yeah.
Lots of people left, and so I've this is such an individualized decision for big companies. Like at the end of the day, yes, you have the Elon Musks, the Tim Cooks of the world saying this is what's happening. But in an execution perspective, it's really coming down to that line manager. Because I have a couple of friends at Apple that are in one of the global categories, and neither one of them is opposed to go back to the office. They're like, no, it'll be cool. It's not too, like, I want to, but their individual challenge of now my sample size of 2 people is that because they're in a global team, there's no one that they work with on that campus, not a person. So the potential for serendipity and water cooler talk, it might not be there. So it is utterly pointless. So if you let this decision come down to the line manager, then it's done in a better way than just saying you got to be back in the office tomorrow.
But here's the thing. Back in the consulting, I mean, when I was in consulting, even if you were on the bench, they told you, don't stay home, come into the office, and they'd encourage you to do that. Work on something. There's always a partner in the office who's going to have something that they're working on that you can contribute, right? And so there, I think even though we have all these tools, the lack of this human interaction, the serendipity of just, kind of walking past somebody and bumping and, or even being able to walk into office and say, hey, I'm not working on anything. I'm on the bench or on the beach. Can I help out on something? Not having those opportunities to contribute, having that connection, because as a consultant, it's very important for you to develop relationships with managers as well as partners, because they become your pipeline for work. If they don't know you, they're not going to bring you a project. Yeah. There are all these things that we've already learned, okay, that organizations have already learned, that people are unlearning to a certain degree of detriment. And I agree with you. There's certain roles in companies where working from home just really doesn't matter. If you're sales, for instance, a lot of sales folks, not a lot. I mean, they're on the road all the time. Like as a consultant, I was on the road 4-5 days out of the week. So why would I hardly ever went into the office because I was always on client side. Yeah. Right. But if I ever found myself on the beach, I would go to the office if there was one. And so I think there's once again, an underappreciation of human contact, human interaction, real relationships, like what we were talking about last week. You got to get out because it's a competitive differentiator. Do you know what I'm saying? And people sitting at home, if you're on the beach, guess what? You're probably going to be screwing around, doing stuff, being distracted. But what's worse is you're not nurturing human relationships that are going to be able to give you a sustained pipeline of engagement and projects going forward. So that's if I was a partner at one of these big firms, that's what I would be telling folks coming in. It's like, yeah, I expect to come into the office because this is where I'm going to learn about you. You're going to learn about me. We're going to be friends and we're going to do some killer stuff. And we're going to be able to execute on, projects and form well-functioning teams.
Well, I'll tell you.
That's the culture of the company, right? So if you create a culture where you don't need...
yeah, it can be your culture. But the thing is that there's certain realities also that you have to factor in. You can sit there and say, well, we're going to be a virtual company and no one needs to come to the office. We don't need to get together, and go ahead and do that. And then see how well you're going to...
It's not Boolean, right? It's not 0 or 1. So you can meet some teams. So tomorrow I'm going to Zaragoza to meet the other Spaniards working at Brena, for example.
Yeah.
But we do, when it's possible, yearly summits. So we meet, we are going to meet in Mexico.
Yeah. And that's what we did. We did in consulting back in the day. I don't know if they do it anymore, but we had quarterlies where everybody got together, the entire practice got together, and we went to a dinner. It was a nice gala type of event, but it was a cultural event for the firm. So how you do that, I get, it is definitely up to any individual company, but to preach that everyone's going to be working from home or this work from home thing is, I think, that's not how it's going to turn out.
I'll tell you who's really happy of the work. Go back to the office mandate are my friends who run professional services and security business. Because now it's like, oh wait, you want us in the office? Well, the cost is different because now I've got people traveling. So anyway, there's been a few where it's like, yes, that's fine. Renegotiate. We need you here. And others like, you know what? It's been working fine for 2 years. Just stay, because I don't want to pay the difference. Funny, again, completely different for folks in consulting.
No, but that's how that was a cost-cutting trend that happened in consulting, and I think I've mentioned this several times before. A lot of these organizations, service organizations, realized it doesn't work. It actually works against the adhesion, sort of this cultural adhesion effect. It's not good. So whether or not we relearn that lesson, the fact of the matter is in the past, we've already gone through this cycle. The cost cutting thing was, it's cheaper to keep people at home. But then the net effect was, it's having a detrimental effect on our culture.
Also, many decades from now, because, us four, we didn't join the workforce when social media was what it is today. Like, all of our, network, like it was always like, in person. Like we are wired this way, right? And, you have a lot of people that's as close as to a relationship as they get. They're following even if it's a friend, right? Like I'm living, I'm connecting with people through, Instagram or TikTok or whatever. So like, to a certain extent, like I know what they're up to, where they went, their kids' names, whatever. But that is very, very different than like I actually hung out with my friend and we, Marc is going to meet his colleagues. He's getting in a car and he's going to travel for a bit, and there's going to be this, and you just cannot replace that. And it's not. And I'm saying this in context of Back to the Office. Like I think that it's incredibly beneficial, and you just cannot replace those human interactions, even the ones that suck. Even if you like you ended up and like this guy's a jerk. Even that you can, because I can offend you remotely. Right. Yeah. I can say something, I can offend you remotely, but in person, like there's that, just you just cannot replace that. And I hope we're not unlearning, right? That we're humans and we need contact.
Yeah, there's going to be a balance. I think it's just the narrative is skewed the other way, is my point. And I think you make a really good point that we did back in the day. We didn't have social. But we were doing the same kind of discounting of human interaction, being together as we're doing today, is my only point, right? So,
yes. So, is there anything big going on this week in Germany, maybe?
Kind of a messy.
Yes.
Largest industrial show in the planet.
There you go.
Nearby galaxies.
And clearly none of us are there.
No, my they didn't want me there, but my peoples are there.
That's good. That
would have been easier to get to. Embedded World in Nuremberg is like a friggin' pain in the ass. I wanted to go, but I was like looking at the ticket going, you got to be friggin' kidding me. It's like 28 hours door to door.
28 hours? Were you going to Germany via Hong Kong? I mean,
literally, it might have just been that way. It was ridiculous.
I remember. I seem to remember, like, I'm going to think of 2017 Hanover Messe, and you could not get to the city. It's actually a pretty small town for such a giant event. It's overwhelming. You always hear stories about people hundreds of miles away taking the train in every morning because there's nowhere to stay. There's not enough hotels. And so I remember almost total inability to get there. But I guess we could get to Frankfurt. And so me and my partner in crime, so I was at Hitachi, and another product manager I had worked with, Janesh, we both met up in Frankfurt and hopped on the train there underground in the airport and took that. And actually there was a train stop right by the event. And we literally just got out with our rollerboard suitcases and went straight to the Hitachi stand. It's like, where we are, let's launch Lumada. But that was crazy stuff. I've never seen such a big event. Goes on forever. It's unbelievable.
Is it bigger than CES?
Yeah, no, yeah, well, I don't know.
I guess in the industrial category, yes.
Yes.
In terms of square footage of the show, I don't think so.
Isn't the Las Vegas Convention Center the size of Hanover.
No. But remember, it's multiple buildings across a giant area. You're going in and out of giant buildings at Hanover. So it's not just one thing, which is not unlike CES, where you're going in and out of casinos, convention centers. People are doing events everywhere. I'd say the dinero that's generated by the people who are at Hanover totally blows away CES, because it's heavy industrial, serious business versus consumery kind of stuff, right?
Real hardware.
Real stuff.
So, let me ask you guys something. So I read this article that says that Industry 4.0 is just starting, and I think it was a panel, actually the title of a panel at Hannover Messe, but it was weird. The abstract basically made it look like Industry 4.0 wasn't happening, and there was a lot of resistance to it. What do you guys think?
Well, read the original document, just because lots of people have opinions, but it's an actual document for the German government and a consortium of their manufacturers, and you can read it, and it says what it is. When you read it, you might be underwhelmed. When you see what they think is the future of whatever, you'd be like, yeah, we're doing that. It's also a destination. Industry 4.0 is a place they hope to arrive at by 2030. But there's lots of companies using it as marketing, saying we're an Industry 4.0 company doing it today or whatever. It's like everyone's got a long way to go.
Yeah, and I'll give you, because I always like to do the extreme examples. So an extreme area where Industry 4.0 is happening today, you have small component manufacturers that, again, they might make two parts for, say, Boeing or Airbus or whoever, who have come out of industry and are building just fully automated facilities. That is the epitome of 4.0. Like everything's automated, computer vision, machine learning, just everywhere. And it's like two people running a gigantic site. And again, people that came from industry, and it's kind of like, when the WebEx guys went to, Zoom or Blue Jeans, like that sort of thing, experiencing this big monolith. Let me do this one thing very well. So Industry 4.0 is happening within smaller companies who are going to take over some of the larger ones because it's straight up profit. On the other extreme, there's a lot of POC purgatory, because it's really, if you are, take a large manufacturer that has, legacy of equipment and process and people, it's not that they're not implementing 4.0 technology or vision, is that the output is like, oh, it's great, but it's not freaking awesome, right? It's it's a bit underwhelming, but it's out there, and you have and to Rob's point, it was well thought out by between the German government and the manufacturers, because I think 14% of Germany's GDP comes from manufacturing. Like, that sector cannot go away.
It's that low? I thought it'd be a higher percentage.
You know what?
I don't know.
No. Let's see.
That's their game, is manufacturing and export.
You can go to the CIA,
China and Asia as a threat. So
it was 18% in 2020.
Okay.
So I still undershot it, but still a big chunk.
Yeah. So Marc just said something perfect, though. He's talking about Asia, a threat from Asia. And so I remember at the time reading a lot about Industry 4.0 when I was at Hitachi in Japan. And some of the takeaway was, this is actually Germany scrambling to do something, to have a vision, to catch up with people who are kicking their ass in Japan and China and Korea, because those guys are just going like a rocket ship. Japanese lean manufacturing is how the world does manufacturing.
Thank you for the order.
Yeah. And so there was that other view. It's like, people are like, oh, Industry 4.0. And it's like, Well, actually, there's another group of guys who have already nailed this shit, and they're doing it every day, and they don't need to come out with a manifesto.
Yeah, and they're already doing Six Sigma, and so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how well we can sell the 7. Because it seems like from a digital transformation perspective, that seems to be the main value proposition.
Well, man, like it's to get a little bit into geopolitics, it is incredibly hard to compete if you are your average German manufacturer with the pay that is mandated by law, with the benefits that have to be funded and the social service, right? That structure versus, let's not pick a country, but, country in Asia where labor laws are super loose, environmental laws could be super loose. The payment, the hourly to the employee is not as high. You just cannot compete. And then you throw in the middle a buyer that wants a thing, and it's just going to go like, oh, geez, sorry. Sorry. Yeah. And I say geopolitics because you can't have this conversation without the government in it and subsidies and tariffs, right? How do you, because, we're failing, but we're trying to, regulate this thing, but it's really hard to compete with industry where there's so many things that just are not in a level playing field. It's tough out there, man.
But they sell this vision that they manufacture with quality, right? That nobody else can do, right? So they sell this vision really well.
Yeah.
So they are competing against it, right?
Well, that's a good point.
It's not cheap because it's good quality.
Yeah, superior German engineering is that theme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But look, and it's a valid point, Marc. But and I guess it'll depend on the product. But here's the thing: we all agree that you want quality, you want the best quality. But again, depending on what we're talking about, at some point it's like, that's good enough. Like as a buyer, like I know that's not the best. Okay, I know it has less features or whatever. It's okay. It's just good enough. Yeah. And when you have a chunk of your addressable market, that good enough is, good enough, screw quality. It doesn't matter. Now it's like, people, nothing against them. If you buy a Leica camera, like I think they look cool. And one time I looked at how much they were, I'm like, oh gosh, like that's a really expensive, like it's a niche. I'm sorry, like I have a $180 little Samsung little point and shoot from Best Buy that still works, good enough, right? Yeah. So anyway, there's
it depends on the mindset of your product or your own mindset. You need a camera that needs to last 50 years with the perfect lenses, etc. Yeah, absolutely. Or you need something that you will give to your children and they will destroy it.
I wonder if there's possibly two views of quality, because this will sound weird, and all my friends in Deutschland are going to hate me now. But you own a Mercedes or whatever, and it's this superior German engineering, and then at regular intervals you go to the Mercedes dealership and spend insane amounts of money for it to be maintained and tuned and everything, so it's the perfect car. And it costs a lot of money to have that amazing German engineering. Meanwhile, I buy a Subaru from Japan and I drive it for 600,000 miles and all I do is change the oil. Which car is superior? Which car is better engineering?
Yeah. Well, it depends. It's a vision that you want to sell to other people, right? If you drive a Mercedes or a BMW, you are selling to the other people that you have a status, right? If you drive a Subaru, what are you show? But it's about you, What do you want to show? No?
Well, this would be an interesting, if we just force the engine quality category, nothing else, no status, right? Because Subaru, that's like, Portland, Oregon moms. Hello, right? Versus Mercedes is more like, I don't know, the Seattle bourgeois. I don't know, right? But engine quality, like how do we measure that? Because again, if all I want to put 1 million kilometers on this car, who's going to give it to me at the lowest cost of ownership?
But yeah.
And if you drive around Portland and you notice all those Subarus on the road from the 80s still, there's a message hiding underneath there about quality, right?
Yeah.
But they can tell you that, it's more, this car pollutes more than the Germans and so on and so on.
But it has lots of stickers on the back of it saying, think globally, act locally, and all that stuff that you would expect in Portland.
This is one other thing. Like, I love talking to you guys because look, it's so many ways to break this down. So that 30-year-old Subaru with the environmental conscious stickers, like that would be an interesting life cycle bit, because to Marc's point, there's no way. This vehicle hasn't taken advantage of technology to reduce miles per gallon. So that's a fact. If it's not properly maintained, it might actually be polluting more than a modern car. But from a life cycle perspective, it's also one vehicle for multi-generation, 3 decades, that it's not in a pile of junk occupying space and decomposing into the air. Like, there's so many ways to break this down.
And tying everything back to industrial IoT, longevity is being, we talked about it last week, actually. And that was like one of the bullet points that the Honeywell guys were talking about. It's about, I forgot what their little tagline was. I don't know if it was infinite, longevity, but longevity is important. And it's probably one of the greatest value propositions that an IoT solution provider can bring to the table, whether it's hardware or software. You have to look at the whole system. And one of the things that I know that they press a lot, and I'm sure their competition does as well, and it's the thing that a lot of IoT companies need to consider, is pushing this whole idea of longevity, longevity of value, right? Yeah. And that ends up being trickier to do as you make things more software defined, right? And this idea that you're going to be doing constant updates and stuff like that, new features, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, with the Tesla, this new dash thing or whatever, that center console UI thing, I wish they never changed it. It's horrible. I want to restore to the older version because I can't find anything, and that's got to be the worst thing in the world. You're driving, you can't find a function you were used to being able to access in the old UI.
You trust the AI, Leonard, and you just focus on the dashboard. Let the Tesla do the driving. I just hope no cones show up.
And so, on that note, we're gonna have to shut this thing down because I have a hard stop.
Me too.
Well, let's shut it down.
But wait. I want to show something.
Yes, show
what I have.
Oh, I love it.
Say something so we can see it on camera.
This is So this is a guitar called Fender Arduino. So you just plug here. I need to solder it. You just put here an Arduino Uno. I will solder some buttons here. And it's just an electric guitar that you can program. It has a speaker and some LEDs and...
I love it.
So I will be able to play with you very soon, Leonard.
I love it.
Yes.
That's awesome.
We have to do that.
You need one of these, Leonard.
All right.
Yeah, I do.
Well, folks, you've made it to another episode of IoT Coffee Talk. We talked about everything from work from home to go to Hanover Messe and how to get there super, super quick. Thank you for listening. Sign up, share, like, IoTCoffeeTalk.com. Find us on YouTube through your favorite browser. Tell your friends, tell your families, tell your cousins. And if you listen to the whole thing and you're wondering where Zaragoza, Spain is, it's kind of like in the middle of Barcelona and Madrid. And the most iconic band ever to come out of Spain was born there. So you should check that out too.
Really?
With that, be safe. We'll see you next week. Peace.
Adios.